Hi, I'm Marcel, and welcome to me screaming into the void, mostly about books. I had what I thought was a very successful library challenge last year, and therefore I'm going to continue that in 2026 because I want to use my library more frequently, and this is one way to do it. So, for my plans for 2026, I picked out 2 prompts, and those were my prompts for borrowing and reading the books for January. And for January, I, among other things, got the prompt random letter, which is a prompt where I get a random letter. This time it was the letter G, and therefore read the book John Grisham, Camino Island. And I read this also because I am doing a form of genre, I don't want to say challenge, but analysis project in some sense. So last year I did a romance genre where analysis project, in lack of a better term, where I read a ton of different romance books to try and figure out what is going on here. And now I want to do the same thing with mystery/thrillers. And what I want to do with that challenge is to understand why, when we have readathons and different genres come up, why do very often mystery, thriller end up in sort of one camp, in one sense? Why are mystery, thriller two subgenres that are very often linked together? So I read this as part of this larger project. And one of the things that I, for example, have read about it, and I'm going to make a video where I talk more about that project, is, for example, that mystery and thriller are different from one another because mystery focuses on a crime that we are trying to solve, and thrillers is more about, well, life and death. So John Grisham, Camino Island, is a representation of the subgenre of mystery thriller genres that is called mystery thriller. So it is a book that people sort of say as an sort of dang in the middle between mystery and thrillers. The book is about a heist of first edition books, among other things, by F. Scott Fitzgerald. It's F. Scott Fitzgerald's first editions that are stolen and then sent to Camino Island. And then the FBI, I think it is FBI, or is it someone that is trying to get these manuscripts back, that hire a random author to go to Camino Island and infiltrate a writing retreat, because the leader of the writing retreat is the guy everyone thinks has received these stolen first editions. And then, of course, this author falls in love with this guy that is running this retreat that everyone thinks has these stolen manuscripts, and that's the plot of the book. And this was I haven't read that many John Grisham books. I've read some. I read, among other things, The Firm, which is his most well-known, which is more traditional thriller. I have my own beefs with The Firm, but I'm not going to go into details of that. I have to admit that, and I've read up on it, Camino Island is quite different from a lot of John Grisham's other works. Again, it's more mystery rather than thriller, even if it is also thriller-based. Using sort of these two sort of themes and analysis theory points regarding, is there a crime, which is more mystery, and are we talking about life and death in regard to the thriller? And this is very much in the middle of it, because of course you have the mystery of trying to figure out who has these stolen first editions, and then you have the life and death when she falls in love with the leader of this writing retreat, and we are constantly wondering, is he a bad guy, or will he harm her? So there is absolutely a form of life and death present, and I would say that it's actually as much present as, for example, in a book like The Firm. But I think also part of what makes it equal to that is because of who is sort of almost killing or harming our main protagonist. Because there is such an intimate relationship, and the fear comes from the intimate relationship, it heightens it, rather than, for example, in a book like The Firm, where the threat is, in one sense, much bigger, but also has a further distance from the main character. So if, for example, this book had not been about a woman falling in love with someone who is probably maybe the leader of some kind of heist perspective and stolen goods, if this had just been a random person, I don't know if he would have managed to point to the sort of fear of life and death as well. At the same time, I am reminiscent of sort of going back to my romance project. I did read sort of action romance, and I did read romance written by men who were books that were much more action-oriented. And I, for example, read J.D. Robb, who has written a lot of action romance. And it's very much, I do have a lot of reminiscence to that sort of genre. So in that sense, it also reads a lot like a romance plot perspective, where so much of sort of the thrill and the suspense is from the guy that I'm in love with is the one who can probably harm me. So both kind of different from, and I know, and when I've read up on the book, a lot of people are reacting quite differently to this book than his other books. It's very different from his other books. But if you are someone who likes romance and wants to try something that's a bit more thriller, this could be an interesting book. Even if it is sort of a kind of wish fulfillment element with the author who's going to be sent into this thing. It says, but what am I supposed to do? I can't do anything. And the person then from either the FBI or the police or whoever that entity that is sending her in says, well, if you can't do it, no one can, and we'll just scrap the whole operation. But then again, both thriller, mystery, and romance do have some kind of wish fulfillment, I am special element to them. The second book that I read for my library challenge was for the prompt themed display, which was that I was that libraries very often have books placed out and chosen to be out based on certain themes. And this book was picked from one of these themes based on the display was, of course, January. You're going to learn something new. And this is Eilif Shafak's The Architect's Apprentice. I'm just going to double check that that is the correct translation for the book, if they have. Oh, maybe they don't have it. That I'm so used to having all of that information in the beginning of the book. So it's the Architect's Apprentice is the English translation for it. And this is about a young boy who is, we're in between the 1500s and 1600s, because we're spanning his entire life. So it's a young boy that comes to Istanbul, and he is the trainer of, or the carer of, a white elephant that has been given to the Sultan as a gift to the Sultan. And he is from, he says at the beginning that he is from India. And then he takes care of the elephant. He falls in love with someone who is out of his league. And then the palace architect, or the chief architect, finds him and makes him one of his 4 apprentices. And a lot of stuff is happening in this book. And I think that is probably... I wanted to like this book, and I think that is one of the problems with literary fiction. Literary fiction, because it can be everything, don't really have any limitations of what they're going to do. And usually that's one of the things I enjoy with the literary fiction. But I think that was actually to this book's detriment, because I had no idea what kind of story Eilif Shafak wanted to tell. Because at one hand, it's a historical story about this boy who is pushed into a situation that he is not prepared for. It is a mystery book in regard to who is trying to ruin everything for this architect. It is a book about power and grief in regard to how this Sultan is dealing with creating the community around him, and how he has a loss very early in the book and is now not necessarily dealing with it in a positive way for everyone. So there is so many stories sort of pushed together, and I don't necessarily then know, well, where are we? Where do you want us to go with this? Where do you want me? How do you want me to feel about Johan? What do you want me to focus on? Because there's such amalgamation of so many different stories. And all of the stories can be very interesting. Some of them are probably a bit more cliche than others, because some stories are just more told than others. But there's sort of 3 main stories in the book, and each of them are fine on themselves. But there is such... It's so difficult when they are, especially at the end, when she's trying to force all of these stories together, and and sort of prove why we are following this storyline and this storyline and this storyline, that all of them have been sort of in cahoots with one another. And there is a larger picture, because she doesn't really manage to do that. At the same time, my favorite sort of plot point or storyline of this book is the focus on the architecture, is the focus on how this sultan, who is grieving in such a way and is sort of acting out his power, and the way the main architect, so not Johan, the person we're following, but he's the architect of the architect's apprentice, is having to then navigate what the sultan is doing, and how important architecture actually is for a culture and for a society, and how architecture shapes what we are going to do and how we're going to do it. For example, there is a discussion in this with the Sultan wanting to build mosques. He is grieving, so he is building mosques as a way of ensuring that the people that he is grieving will have a good afterlife, which is a very understandable motivation. The problem is, of course, that then they sort of point out, okay, but what about everything else? For example, there is a discussion of access to water. Should we build aqueducts inspired from the Romans in Europe? And there is this whole debate going on, and I loved that part of the book, and the way that she manages to describe these wonderful buildings and the understanding of why these buildings are the way they are. Is such it's a gift. It's just a gift to see someone talk about something in a way where you just, oh, I understand it now. This book was originally written in English because she has moved to English, but she is from Turkey. So she is talking about a culture she is well versed in. So that's the two books I read. Both kind of a mixed bag, but I am happy I've read both of them. And now I'm going to pick out my prompts for February. To do that, I have written... last year I had 12 prompts, and I picked 2 of them at a time. Some of the prompts didn't work, so I are down to now 8 different prompts, and we're going to do the prompts 3 times in a year, but I'm going to pick 2 and 2 books each month. So these are the prompts, and I'm now going to pick out this one and this one. So for February, I am going to read a book from the library that is a book club book. So a book that they are reading for some kind of book club, and a random letter. So that is the same as with the John Grisham book. I'm going to now randomize a letter and then figure out and find a book with an author from that letter. So I am finding my random letter generator, and we'll see what book author I am going to read. So in this, I have all of the letters, including 3 that we have in Norwegian that is not in English, which is a, ø, and å. But we'll spin. So I'm going to find a book by an author that starts with letter I, and follow me, subscribe, and next month I will show you which 2 books I have read. And maybe you will be inspired by me and tell me in the comments what you are reading, borrowed from your library. Thank you for listening to me screaming into the void.